Hello and welcome to this podcast. I'm Hemant Singh and this is the Delhi Policy Group. In this episode, we will be examining the national security implications and the geopolitical aftermath of Operation Sindoor. Following the horrific killing of innocent civilians by Islamist terrorists in Pahalgam on April 22nd, India has laid down new markers for assured retaliation against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism and has conducted targeted strikes against terrorist bases in Pakistan and POK. It has subsequently responded to Pak military escalation with precision attacks on Pakistan's military bases and facilities, effectively enforcing a pause to military hostilities. This marks another milestone in India's journey as a rising power, shaping its strategic space and defining the terms of its engagement with adversarial threats to national security. And now we welcome you to our discussion. So let us start with the first part of our discussion today, which is the national security implications following Operation Sindoor. And to discuss this aspect with me is Lieutenant General Dipendra Singh Hooda, our distinguished fellow for military strategy. Dipendra, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Perhaps it's good to begin with looking at the motivation behind the barbaric terrorist attack in Pahalgam, and also the kind of linkages which exist between the TRF, the LET, and the Pakistani military.
So let me start with the TRF. The TRF was created by the Lashkar-e-Toiba sometime in October 2019. And the motivation was that there was enormous pressure being applied by the Financial Action Task Force on Pakistan. And so the idea was to create an organization so that Pakistan could say that, look, Pakistan-based outfits like LET have nothing to do with what is happening in Kashmir. Yes. And it's purely like a sort of a local resistance. Mm-hmm. But I think it's very clear to intelligence community, not only in India, but around the world, that there are deep linkages between the TRF and the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Mm-hmm. Coming specifically to the Pahalgam attack, look, it's quite clear it's not some local terrorist group stumbling on a group of tourists and then carrying this out. There is deep planning that is gone behind it. The choice of the targets, which were tourists, traditionally had never been targeted before. The manner of execution, pulling out people from one community, brutally murdering them in front of wives and children, shows that this is a very deliberate act that has been done. And as I said, not by some local group, and fingers clearly pointing to Pakistan. Why would they do this? Let's look at Kashmir, in the last 3-4 years, and we find that violence levels had been going down, despite there was an uptick in the Jammu region. But despite that, if you look at the overall data, violence levels had been reducing, particularly in the Kashmir Valley. Tourists were coming in very large numbers. The local economy was booming. So obviously, I mean, this puts lie to the Pakistani narrative that Kashmir, there is a local uprising that is happening, there's almost a civil war that is happening. I think the timing is also important, because if you see, that's the time when Vice President J.D. Vance was in India.
Yes.
And so this whole attempt to internationalize the whole Kashmir issue, because frankly, Kashmir was disappearing from international media attention. So I think these kind of motivations went into triggering this Pahalgam attack, and which is why I say clearly not work of some local group, but of some hunters in Pakistan.
So did it actually succeed in some of their probable intent to cause social disharmony in India, or how did we react? Was the reaction exactly the opposite of what Pakistan might have expected?
Yeah, so this whole issue of trying to bring a communal color to it, I think just didn't succeed in any way. In fact, what was most surprising was the way the Kashmiris themselves turned out. I have never seen such crowds of people spontaneously coming out and protesting against terrorist violence. So in some ways it has backfired for sure on Pakistan. I think what we need to do is sort of reinforce the sentiment among the local people that look, terrorism doesn't suit you, and if we can push this narrative further, again, I think this very long-standing problem of Kashmir could find some resolution.
All right. So it's useful to remember as we discuss this issue that these names of terrorist groups keep going through different permutations and combinations, and we know that from the time of I think, if I remember correctly, Al-Ansar in the 1990s, and when it slaughtered in cold blood a Norwegian tourist, and the world woke up to this reality. So there's been a constant chain of names being rotated around, but the fountainhead is still the same, because it is the Pakistani military which supports these groups and makes sure that they're protected on its territory. All right. Do you read any particular aspect in this in terms of the impact on relations, important Indian relations, such as with the US?
So I think there is an attempt by Pakistan to try and sort of, they say, hyphenate India-Pakistan relations. As I said, J.D. Vance was here when this attempt was made. There is also news that America has sort of got drawn into this conflict and attempted to sort of mediate to bring about a ceasefire. How this impacts as relations go forward is something that so we'll have to closely watch.
All right. So let me turn to my next question, which is our strikes against the targets, which are the camps of terrorist groups, which were selected very carefully, identified in relation to their direct linkage with terrorist activities against India. And we saw that there were visuals in some cases of Pakistani generals attending the funerals of terrorists, which just confirmed that they were linked directly to internationally proscribed groups like the LeT,
Something
which was known, and then if any further confirmation was needed, it was that instead of heeding our very clear message on the military channel that this was an attack on terrorist groups, not against the Pakistani military or civilian infrastructure, and it would be best if they left it at that. They chose to resort to military force against India to protect their right to maintain these terrorist groups. So now, overall, you've seen that we have gone in and delivered a new type of message on this. What's really changed in India's response strategy on this occasion and going forward in the future? You've seen what the Prime Minister has announced, and how do you read that?
So I look at Operation Sindoor as an absolutely new paradigm in how India has decided to deal with this problem of Pak-sponsored terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've carried out also limited cross-border operations in the past, 2016 and 2019. But really the scale and scope of Operation Sindoor, the selection of targets, I think clearly India said we are not merely looking at the foot soldiers who are there in their militant camps, but we will strike at the masterminds. And the masterminds were terrorist groups like Lashkar and Jaish, whose headquarters were hit. I mean, that was a very strong signal. And I think India has also indicated that in case Pakistan military intervenes, then the military itself becomes a target. So I think this whole distinction that used to be made between state and non-state actors is fairly rapidly sort of evaporating now in India. Say, look, you people are behind the Pak army and the terrorist leader, then you are sort of fair and legitimate targets as far as we are concerned. I think we've also, in this case, sort of called the nuclear bluff, because each and every time when there is a crisis that erupts between India and Pakistan, the first card that is flashed is the nuclear card.
Yes.
And we saw that even in this case, that we have nuclear weapons, their minister saying, oh, we have 130 nuclear weapons, they are only meant for India, etc., etc. And I think we've shown that space exists below the nuclear threshold, where we can conduct conventional operations, and conventional operations meant to deter and compel Pakistan to change its behavior. So these, I think, is a new paradigm. And I think apart from the military aspect, I think the diplomatic steps that have been taken this time have also been very firm, particularly holding in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty. And I think a combination of military and diplomatic steps, if we follow through in a consistent manner, maybe I'm saying maybe, you could see some changes in Pakistani behavior as we go forward.
All right. So we take away from that going forward, there will be no distinction between Pakistani state and non-state actors, between terror groups and military targets, and neither one of them can hide behind the nuclear blackmail bogey. All right, the next question brings me to India's military response. And what is your assessment of the effectiveness of this response? And if I may say so as a layman, not a military man, it seems to me quite clear that we were able to establish escalation dominance through our retaliatory responses. And I'll be very happy to hear what you have to say. And
no, I completely agree with you. So let's look at it. I see the military operation in three phases. Mm-hmm. Right, the first phase was the strike on terrorist camps, 9 terrorist targets that India decided, and each of them was successfully hit with precision weapons. So, there is no doubt we've got photographs, we've got evidence. The good thing that the Indian military and the Indian government this time very quickly came out and showed the evidence. So those strikes were absolutely successful. Whichever targets were meant to be hit were hit. The second phase is a phase of what we saw, sort of drone attacks, mostly coming from Pakistan's side, where Pakistan decided to react militarily. And over the next 2 nights, we saw defensive attempts by India to stop these drones attacks coming in. Numbers 300 to 400 drones are coming in every night. And what was striking in this was the effectiveness of India's air defense structure. Because despite the launch of so many drones and missiles, we didn't see any significant impact on our own military infrastructure. And then finally, in response to this, the third phase was the series of attacks that was launched on the night of 9th-10th on Pakistan Air Force infrastructure, radar stations, runways, air defense control, command and control centers. I would say, classic in every sense. The fact that each of these succeeded, the fact that we are now talking about almost in one night, 20% of Pakistan Air Force infrastructure having been damaged, the impact that it would have had on their ability to fly their planes with runways damaged. So, as I said, very, very classic and very extremely successful operation. And I think it was this operation that finally led Pakistan to say, look, I don't think we can carry this on too far, and so let's appeal for a ceasefire. So, as you said, I think escalation dominance has been completely established at each stage. Successfully attacking targets, completely nullifying drone attacks by Pakistan, and then the ability to carry out such a massive strike against their air assets.
Is there any way of assessing what lessons the Pakistani military may take from this? Of course, we know that they started reaching out on the morning of Saturday the 10th, trying to say that we are ready to seize the military activity.
So the one,
but what do you think is going on in their minds?
So I think the one big lesson is that if they continue this, and if actually Operation Sindoor had continued for a few more days, there would have been very significant degradation to Pakistan Air Force. And that is something that would have impacted their whole capability, capacity, their whole narrative that we have been so successful and we've been successful in fighting back against Indian aggression that was launched on us. The more losses that would have come to the fore. And now we are hearing, Pakistan has admitted that they lost at least one AWACS in one of the strikes. So I think if it had continued, it would have very seriously hampered Pakistan's military capability to continue the fight. And I just hope they take that message that this is what could happen.
It's quite amazing because our ability to strike, 13 bases in Pakistan and on the night of 9th, 10th, and to do that after having ensured that we had disabled their air defense systems and their radars, etc. It was quite an exercise and quite a demonstration of the effectiveness of contemporary Indian military power. And all credit goes to our great military, which is the pride of the nation. And you yourself have served so in such a distinguished manner throughout your career. So let me turn to the next issue which we need to look at, which is that of strategic communication. And at all these moments of national crisis, you know that it is extremely essential, especially in today's information world, to be right on top of the strategic communication escalation ladder, if you might put it that way. Now, how do you think we performed? Because there was some aspects of our visual media which left much to be desired, and there's a lot of unverified reporting coming in social media. On the other hand, there was equally unverified but propagandistic reporting in international media, saying that the Pakistani Air Force has defeated the Indian Air Force and Pakistan has won, etc., which continues, by the way, because there are motivations behind it, and we all know what they are. How do you read it? Finally, it's the question of the military briefings. So, your thoughts?
So actually, much of the attention, I think, was focused on the kinetic aspects of the war.
Mm-hmm.
How many camps have been hit, how many people have been killed, etc., etc. But I think an equally furious battle was playing out in the media space. And just as you were mentioned, the kind of fake news that was circulating, fake videos of Gaza and Syria being passed off as attacks being carried out by either India or Pakistan. A lot of disinformation, deep fakes were circulating, which was making sometimes, getting a clear picture very difficult. Unfortunately, and I must say this, some of our traditional media outlets, not ours, but ours and Pakistani both, who are supposed to serve as gatekeepers of truth, actually also were spreading misinformation. And to some extent, while it affects the channel itself. I think when we look at the larger picture, some of this mainstream TV feeding misinformation can actually also hit national credibility. So that's also something that we need to look at. How well did we do? I think the PIB fact check unit did an outstanding job. Very, very quick in debunking fake news and took out a large number of advisories saying this is fake. Not only Pakistan, but even sometimes when our news was giving something, they debunked it. On the international media, so there is a bias now, whether it's due to the current information warfare or this bias that existed for some time.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, I think the first 2-3 days just went into how many Indian aircraft have crashed, how did Chinese missiles perform, which system is better, instead of looking at the whole larger picture of what is happening. Why did this happen? There was absolutely no focus on terror infrastructure, etc. in Pakistan. So it was just full of how many aircraft have been shot down and images, etc. like that. So I think as we go forward, we need to start looking at the information element of warfare more closely. Whether it is conventional warfare or grey zone warfare or hybrid warfare, information dominance is actually going to become a key element in how you fight, how you present your narrative warfare, as they call it. So, and I think it requires professionals to come into this space. I don't think merely military officers or even diplomats by themselves can do it, and they need professionals to advise. On the military briefings, I only have one point. So fine, they were giving out information on a daily basis. My personal feeling is at some stage felt that they were becoming too defensive. That we will not escalate, we have done what we needed to do. And I think sometimes a stronger message that we will escalate could perhaps prevent the other side from responding. Mm-hmm. If we keep saying we don't want to escalate, perhaps the other side gets encouraged to, okay, fine, if they don't want to escalate, we could. So, as you said, strategic messaging is very important in a crisis like this.
Well, we can always say that our intent was non-escalatory, but if there is anything coming from the other side, it will be met with an extremely robust response.
Absolutely.
Now, that needed to be said more clearly and more frequently, in fact, in terms of our military briefings. And as you were mentioning, that we need to be far more agile in rebutting disinformation. And PIB did a good job, but I think professional units everywhere in the military, in the Defense Minister's office, and in the rest of the government would help. Eventually, we need to build our own narrative, because you can take it that as India rises and the powers that be see that a new power is emerging on the international horizon, there will be continued pressures to put us down.
Absolutely.
So we need to be ready for that, and I hope that there will be a lot of thinking in the military on systematizing what was a good start. And I take away one aspect that while our military in its briefings gave verified images from its own operations, the Pak ISPR or whatever it is called was banding about completely photoshopped and AI generated and other different images and saying, look at what we've done and what we've achieved.
Including one from a video game.
You can't do worse than that. I think, yes. All right, the next question. Since Saturday the 10th, we've seen this progression of some contacts at the DGMO level. And they've had a couple of conversations, I guess, and they're going to have one more at the start of next week. How do you see this as something which is progressing a step-by-step process to de-escalate?
So I think this is one of the channels that is there. So once the two governments decided to de-escalate, and I know it was said that it happened because of talks between the two DGMOs, but obviously these decisions are taken at the political level. But now that they have decided, so issues related to any incident that is happening, for example, on day one we saw drones were still coming inside.
What was
Pakistani
that?
side.
Was that some rogue elements or just a scare tactic or what?
I would think more sort of panic, keep surveillance on the other side to see, if any moves are being made or anything coming from the Indian side. I would say more a defensive sort of an approach. So now the DGMOs talk and then they decide, look, if there are some provocations happening, those are immediately sort of discussed and an attempt made to sort of ensure that the ceasefire doesn't break down because of some local incidents. That's the key to what they sort of discuss.
All right. So I think we need to inform people who view this podcast that they should keep in mind that this mechanism of DGMOs is basically intended for conveying military intent and in keeping the information flow going. It does not determine policy.
No, it doesn't.
So it's
that's obviously
yes. People might think that this is the channel of in which we are interacting with the. So this is purely a military channel, and let's see if this progress is continued in terms of de-escalation in coming weeks and days. All right. What are the lessons in terms of military capabilities, and what more should we accumulate? We have done quite a lot, and it's been very clear from our press briefings and from various reporting which is appearing in open channels that a lot of indigenous technologies were used, a lot of capability was built up as a result. There was a lot of integration in the air defense systems between the Army and the Air Force, effective use of technology, latest technologies, etc. But clearly we need much more. We need much more in terms of maybe in terms of standoff weapons and AD and loitering munitions that seem to be working very well, etc. I'm not going to talk about the Navy because that's a completely separate subject on its own. So what do you think? What more should we think of acquiring as inputs which strengthen our resilience?
So although the crisis and the military part of it maybe was only over 3-4 days, but I think some lessons are clear. And the first is the use of unmanned systems. And we've seen, of course, we knew after what we saw in the Russia-Ukraine war that drones are going to be employed in large numbers. And they were in large numbers. I still think not in larger numbers. We need much more capability as far as drones are concerned. So that's something that India will have to look at. Very extensive use of drones, and if you really want those kind of drones to come in, you have to start looking at issues of training, issues of production. Do we have the capacity in India to do it? How do we rope in the private sector? And alongside drones and unmanned systems, also how to counter these drones. So I think we've been fairly successful. But as I said, a lot of these drones were very sort of cheap, commercial, off-the-shelf type of stuff. And not in the numbers, that would pose a threat. So while our air defense worked well, but if you have swarms coming in much larger numbers, And so you also need to integrate electronic warfare. We need
Right.
more electronic warfare units. We are seeing this is a war from afar. I mean, sitting in your own territory, launching long-range systems, missiles, aircraft weapons. This is something that more and more capacity needs to get built up. Many of us have been saying that India should look at a missile force now, of conventional missile. So that is something that that needs to sort of get added up. Air defense is going to take us a lot of attention. And air defense, frankly, what we have today is mostly for anti-aircraft. What we now need to start looking at is, do we have anti-missile kind of air defense systems?
Right. To some extent, the S-400 obviously comes into the anti-missile segment.
But so like
we have,
one is for...
We need to have enough. We need to have enough. Yes.
Plus the fact that the S-400 missiles are really, really costly. So what is the kind of target that you will give?
Yes, you don't expend them on drones.
On drones and small targets and things like that. So I think these are where capabilities and capacities need to be built up. And I think we'll also have to start looking at tactics. Where are air tactics, for example? Air-to-air tactics with beyond visual range systems. Are they appropriate? Do we need to start rethinking some of those things? So I'm sure there'll be a great deal of discussion. We've always been looking at Ukraine war and saying learn lessons. I think this is one operation that will throw up a number of lessons for us.
So we directly had a sharp conflict. So first time we were really engaged in one since 1971. So I think there will be important lessons, and as you point out, capabilities to be built. Some of them are already coming up well, but as you say, we should have a missile force. We have excellent technologies, different ranges of missiles are already available, but to integrate them into a conventional force, which is a standoff force and a deterrent force at the same time below the nuclear threshold, is going to be very important. Battlefield picture integration. As you said, if you've got hundreds of drones or thousands of drones coming, then you need to be able to see the entire battlefield and see how you will deal with it. So good, these lessons are going to be very important for us. Rules of engagement, terms of engagement during conflicts become very important, because that's the way to preempt the enemy and impose unacceptable cost on the adversary. So I hope that we will be looking at all these aspects. Okay, last question. Pakistan is busy thanking everybody, including, strangely, the United Nations, for mediating an end to the conflict. And it's a ultimate irony that it is running around projecting itself as a model global citizen. You really believe that Pakistan will change its resort to terrorist proxies and its entrenched hostility against India? When will that time come? Or should we just be prepared for a long stare down and just strengthen ourselves in every field in terms of comprehensive power, including deterrent military power? How do we deal with this?
Look, I agree with you. I think we have to be prepared for a long stay down. The problem with Pakistan today is, and if we think it's going to change, at spots in a hurry, Pakistan military uses jihadis as the main instrument of its force against India. So it's not an adjunct force that the military is in the forefront and the jihadis are sort of assisting or behind. These are their main weapons. This is what is being used to perpetuate hostility, proxy war against India. So for them to stop this immediately, I think is not practical. The other problem is that over a period of time, the whole military jihadi complex has been so institutionalized in the country that now suddenly breaking it up is going to also invite a huge backlash from the jihadi forces. And we saw that earlier sometimes when JS suddenly started targeting the Pak military. So this is also not going to be easy for them to be able to cut their ties. Maybe it could happen in a decade or more, but I think we just have to ensure that we enhance our capabilities, we continue with the deterrence posture, and have a consistent policy of dealing with them. I don't see them changing in a hurry.
All right, and in terms of the nuclear issue, clearly we need to really make a very careful assessment of what additional deterrent power on the strategic side we need to maintain, because at the end of the day, we are a responsible nation. We do not think that nuclear weapons are meant for use in a battlefield scenario. These are ultimate weapons which are intended to protect national sovereignty and defend against coercive pressures from adversaries, etc. But Pakistan has always said that it views them, if you have them, they're meant to be used. Yeah. That kind of a attitude, which is
for
war fighting, for that kind of bravado continues to be postured by them. Clearly, there is space below the nuclear threshold on the conventional side to respond to them, particularly when we are as careful and as targeted in terms of our intention as we were. But you've commanded our strategic forces, so I think time has come to review and strengthen our strategic deterrent.
Absolutely, sir. It's an element of stability for us. And yes, against Pakistan, we also have another potential adversary in China, and we know that they are modernizing their arsenal at great speed. They're enhancing their nuclear capacity and capability. So that is also something that we need to keep at the back of my mind when we look at improving, modernizing, strengthening our triad. We have to do that.
Excellent. Well, the only aspect which we did not discuss today was the element of our naval power, but that will perhaps come in a subsequent segment of these podcasts from DPG. Thank you, Deep. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So we are back with part 2 of this podcast. With me to discuss the geopolitical aftermath of Operation Sindoor is Ambassador Nalin Surie, our distinguished fellow for diplomacy. Nalin, welcome. I would like you to begin with your reading of the international response to the Pahalgam atrocity. We saw that after initial expressions of sympathy following the terrorist attack, and even the UN Security Council's call to hold perpetrators to account, this was followed soon after by appeals for de-escalation, setting aside India's right to take action against Pakistan-based terror groups. So let us start with your views on how do you see this unfold, how this international response unfolded.
Thank you, Hemant. I think we are talking about a subject which is on the minds of certainly everybody in this country and in South Asia, if not the broader Indo-Pacific. I think you have to divide the reactions which we've got after the Pahalgam attacks into two clear segments. The first segment was we got 26 Hindus got slaughtered. There was the usual condemnation. Some countries said yes, the perpetrators should be brought to justice. And the usual processes continued in the expectation that India will act as it has had in the past. It will be assuaged by these kind of statements of condemnation. Now, they went a step further this time, actually. The United Nations Security Council, of which Pakistan is currently a non-permanent member, issued a presidential statement, which, as you know, is non-binding, which is like a statement which condemns terrorism. It's like a statement of motherhood against terrorism. It also said that the perpetrators must be brought to justice, etc. But it did not take into cognizance the fact that a certain Indian religious community had been singled out and slaughtered, and that this was something which would have been condemned, should have been condemned in the manner it should have been reflected that this is what happened, but nobody reflected that. So I think the messaging to us is very clear. Be assuaged by this statement. We are all on your side. We all hate terrorism, etc. And hopefully you will react and do things the way they should be done. We, of course, took our time to prepare our counter-reaction. I think the response from the Cabinet Committee on Security the next day on 23rd April was very clear. I believe the international community and our neighbors, Pakistan, made a big mistake in not reading the subtext of that statement, of the CCS statement. I think the determination of the government on this occasion to do more than just act in a manner that is demonstrative was quite clear, at least to me. The fact that we decided to put in abeyance the Indus Water Treaty was a clear sign of that, and the other steps which had been announced. No doubt, I think our neighbors, Pakistan to the west, began their preparations. They had the background of Balakot and the earlier strike against terrorist infrastructure camps in POK. And I think the fact that nothing happened for a few days maybe brought in a sense of complacency that maybe India is going to go the normal way. And then suddenly we unleashed this new electronic-based warfare, where we were very precise in what we wanted to do. We attacked terrorist infrastructure camps, consciously avoided civilian and military targets. And we said, we punished the terrorists. There were 21 camps we identified. We attacked some of them, in effect leaving the message out in the open that if need be, we can attack the remaining 12 camps also. 21 were identified, 9 were hit, with different means of hitting them. I think that set the cat amongst the pigeons. And the fact that not just Pakistan, but the international community had been caught off guard, I think it's a reflection of how well this operation was planned and how non-conventional it was in its formulation and its execution. I think that got people worried because we did not say we are going to stop with 9 camps. The expected reaction came from Pakistan. We had said that we would not react unless our military targets or civilian targets were hit. That is exactly what they did. And they probably again expected, and so did the international community, that maybe this would be, the tit for tat would be over. Again, they did not read the signal, which had been made clear by the spokespersons in their interventions in public. And we hit back hard at military targets and caused a lot of damage. I think that is when both Pakistan and the main supporters and those who worry most about the India-Pakistan being a flashpoint, so to say, got really worried. The usual telephone calls started being made, I guess, to Delhi. I think they all got the same reaction. The line taken by India was consistent. It was focused, remained consistent and focused. And obviously, some countries thought that they could take credit for bringing about what we are calling a cessation of firing, not a ceasefire. Whatever the terms used, I think the fact is that it got worried enough for the Pakistani DGMO to call our DGMO and say that, look, we should stop this. And we agreed because they said they would agree. But I think we also made it clear that this, as far as we were concerned, this is only a suspension of the action.
Yes.
I think this is very important. And the statement which the Prime Minister made on the 12th of May I think is now a fundamental change in strategy. And I think this is probably going to make the world wake up and listen for a change, I hope. And more importantly, make our colleagues in Pakistan, especially in the armed forces, wake up and listen. And the second aspect of the reason for this long explanation is that the second sort of reaction which came in was suddenly now, please de-escalate, stop the fighting. Pakistan, you're both nuclear weapon states. The usual old argument came into play. I think in this occasion also, even after the second set of arguments, it became clear to us. I think it's been clear to people like you and me for a long time. It's been clear, I think, to people in the government also, that look, on issues like this, we stand alone. We will be able to use the international community to the extent that it's willing to help us. But in the ultimate analysis, we have to fight this battle ourselves. So this time, the government has laid out in unmistakable terms what the tactics and objective and strategy are going to be. Obviously, details are not being let out. So I think the world will now have to come to terms with the fact that there is now a new normal, as the Prime Minister said. So I'm not surprised with the international reactions, but I think the way we have responded this time, particularly the second set of attacks, will make the international community understand that this time India means business. India will not be assuaged by simple statements of condemnation. The reality of what has happened has to be recognized. And I must say here, I found we were doing an analysis of the reactions which have come in.
Yes.
To my understanding, and I'm not saying that we did a complete 100% analysis, but from the analysis we have done of all the major countries, including our neighbors in Southeast Asia, the only country which actually recognized the fact that there had been a segregation of Hindus who were then shot was the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mr. Anwar Ibrahim. So I think that speaks for itself. Of course, President of Indonesia made a very forthright statement, but he did not, at least in public, what has been released in public, acknowledge the fact that the terrorists actually segregated the Hindus and killed them.
Yes, but of course it was partly implicit in his recognition of the horror of the atrocity and his calling in the Indian ambassador to express personal sympathy.
Exactly. Which was quite a unique gesture, actually.
Who were the outliers in this exercise?
I think I wouldn't name any country specifically beyond the point, because I think the general reaction was we condemn the attack. There was no real desire to recognize the fact that this was an effort at instigating ethnic cleansing or creating communal disharmony. There was a certain concern expressed, and once the Indian reaction, kinetic reaction came into play, I think they realized that India was being very serious. And that's when I think the telephone calls really started flying, and the calls for our being careful and holding back became explicit. I think this latter set of reactions came from virtually everybody, including those who were more willing to be helpful in their first set of statements. I think nobody wanted this to blow up in a manner that would be uncontrollable.
Very good. So, before moving on to the next question, I think that it would be fair to say that also the undertone in this reaction of the international community was creating a very false equivalence between India and Pakistan, where there is no comparison at any level in this, especially in the context of this atrocity. So let us move on now to the next question which I have before me. That is the question which you already alluded to, which is the question of a possibility of a conflict between two nuclear powers. And that's been a long-standing refrain which we are quite used to from the West whenever it comes to any kind of tension between India and Pakistan. There is conventional space for response below the nuclear threshold. And that's been one of the lessons which is slowly emanating out of the conflict in Europe itself. But in this particular case, do you think that the clarity with which India has said that there will be no nuclear blackmail anymore, has this refrain now been put to rest to some extent?
I think if you look at India's reactions in the recent years, we have incrementally been calling the nuclear bluff.
Yes.
Start with Kargil, we went up to a point, take the strikes on the terror camps in POK, and take Balakot. I think we demonstrated that you can intervene militarily and keep the nuclear danger well behind the shadows. And this particular set of operations, because they were so clearly targeted and focused, ensured that there was no reason for anybody to react by any other means but the means that you had adopted. So I think this bogey of nuclear blackmail has been called. But we have to be careful because you have to be dealing with a reasonably rational partner to ensure that they don't go out of hand in terms of using their nuclear assets. I think and I hope and I pray that our colleagues in Pakistan have that sanity and that this recourse will never be used. So I think what has happened since then is even more explicit. And since this was an expression at the highest level of government in India, that the era of nuclear blackmail is over. The signaling is quite clear. We are going to react in a manner of our choosing if a terror attack takes place on India. The focus of our attack will be to take out those terrorists and the terrorist sites. And I think nobody can deny that because by and large the international community implicitly, if not explicitly, acknowledges your right to go after these terrorists. So I think that is where the Security Council presidential statement becomes useful for us to hang this peg on. That we have a right to punish the terrorists.
Yes.
And punish those who indulge in acts of terrorism or encourage acts of terrorism or in any other way aid and abet them. So as long as our actions are focused, I think you can hopefully be quite certain that the nuclear blackmail aspect should not come into play.
Well, let's hope that, as you said, sanity will prevail and this pretense that Pakistan has a nuclear policy of full spectrum deterrence, which basically means that nuclear weapons are meant for military use against the Indian position and that of the international community, that these are ultimately instruments to prevent political coercion and existential threats, not just for the use in any military conflict. So let's hope that that kind of sense will start to dawn in the military in Pakistan. So moving on to the next question, again, it's still partly related to the international response. In the midst of this nuclear and military grandstanding by Pakistan, we saw the IMF's decision to reward Pakistan with a new EFF loan. And I think this really stood out as an example of Western duplicity and double standards. What is behind this open-ended largesse and indulgence of Pakistan? And what do you think India can do if there is anything that you can do about it?
See, the unfortunate reality is that Pakistan has its uses. And it has been functioning as a good surrogate for various powers over the years. And its usefulness derives partly from its geostrategic location, the fact that it is the only Islamic country with a nuclear weapon, the fact that it can still be used to influence events in Central Asia, in Afghanistan, in Iran. These are all issues of interest to a lot of countries. And there is also the China factor to bring into play. China is a firm ally of Pakistan, and as you know, China's role in the IMF is growing day by day. They may still not have the quota that they feel they should have, and perhaps the numbers suggest that they should have, but they have enough influence with the others to help ensure that the voting goes in Pakistan's favor in these matters. I would say, purely speculatively, that part of the reason why this loan was sanctioned was to put pressure on Pakistan to ask for a ceasefire.
Yes.
Now, I'm saying I'm being speculative, but I think nothing else really makes sense. And if you look at the timing, it's also pat that it happened soon after the loan was approved. We, of course, abstained. As you know, the IMF 14 does not allow you to vote against.
Yes.
But we could have shown our anger or our unhappiness by physically walking out of that meeting. But we don't do that normally, as you know. India takes a position and stands by its position. So our statement of abstention was very clear where we stood. But to me, the timing of the IMF loans approval, and frankly, I think neither of us was surprised that it would be approved. And the sudden request by Pakistan to ask for a DGMO's call, I think there is some major relationship between these two factors. Pakistan if now Pakistan does not mend its ways, it actually gives ammunition to India for the next time to say, look, you gave them $1 billion plus, and look what it's been used for. So I don't think it's such a great victory for Pakistan. But it does, again, as I said at the beginning, underline the usefulness as Pakistan has for some of the big geopolitical players, the big players in the region.
Well, the United States clearly has a implicit veto right with its 16% voting share, but obviously chose not to exercise that, even though there were some initial questions that there might be such a possibility. But as you say, Pakistan has its certain uses, but hopefully the IMF and the international community will realize that this persistent and sequential series of bailing Pakistan out with the 24th and 25th extended fund facility is not going to make the country really.
But you know, it only proves my point. It proves my point how useful they are.
Yes.
That is the question.
Yes,
sometimes they're useful
the loans have to be repaid.
Yes.
So
you see,
yeah.
but you know, the point is they want to keep Pakistan assuaged.
Are they then being used to repay the Chinese? Because there are $40 billion of outstandings on the CPEC loans.
Well, you know, if you need to have surrogates like Pakistan, then you have to pay for them.
Yeah.
There's always a price to be paid.
Okay, all right. So the next question which I have is another troubling one. And here again, you know, you see that you have a failing military terror state. And that state is trying to suddenly take a shot across our bow to revive the India-Pak hyphenation, bring back the Kashmir issue in the international discourse, things of that sort. I mean, this is the international repercussion which I'm referring to. How far do you think this ploy has succeeded?
It's an interesting question, and I've always wondered why people have been arguing in recent days that, you know, the actions we have taken have brought back the hyphenation. My view is just the contrary, as I've discussed with you before.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, this has destroyed the hyphenation. And you made it very clear that you hit me and I'm going to hit you back so hard that there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. And I have now used instruments in my arrows in my quiver, which I never used before. And those arrows remain in my quiver, and I'm not taking them out.
Yes.
In spite of the so-called ceasefire or cessation of firing. So I think hyphenation works if I'm blackmailed by you. But I'm not going to be blackmailed by you. Where's the hyphenation? And in spite of all the pressure that was put on us from outside, and I think that is no doubt, you and I have both faced this during our own serving careers where we served.
Yes.
The government listened. I mean, you listen to your friends and allies politely. You give them the polite responses that those pressures deserve, and you do exactly what you need to do.
Indeed. Okay, so let's talk about the little bit of the elephant in the room. So, about the role of the United States in this episode. After repeatedly for several days professing indifference, the US leadership then turned to claim that it had brokered peace. It had even used the carrot of trade as leverage. Whatever the facts are, of course, we know what they are, and they might suggest otherwise. Was this the US once again coming to the rescue of the Pakistani military, its long-term client or client state? And after years of progress in India-US ties, how should we read this sudden undertone of even-handed parity and equating countries which are not comparable in any context?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think there are several aspects to this which need to be looked at very carefully. One is, old mindsets don't change very easily in any system.
Yes.
The United States leadership is probably trying to bring in revolutionary change from the top. But has the system changed? Answer is no. So I think from time to time the system does catch up. As I said earlier, the accuracy of our strikes on both occasions, first strikes and the subsequent strikes to respond to Pakistani strikes on our military and civilian targets, probably got people in Washington worried. Nobody in the West wants to see a defeated Pakistan. I think there are also two views in the West, and maybe I'm being controversial here, about how far the rise of India should be assisted.
Which it hasn't been so far.
Yes,
just on the cusp of the process.
The process of assisting India's rise has begun. Mm-hmm. And I think if they look at what has happened with China, probably some elements worry that, we can't control China, which we helped rise, but will we be able to control a democratic India, which is rising, and should we help this India? Should we not have some levers to play vis-a-vis this India? Mm-hmm. So I think that is another aspect to it. But I think, insofar as the US reaction is concerned, the United States is the most powerful country in the world today. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
In my mind, at least. Economically, technologically, financially, and even militarily. No question about it. But the problem, I think, is, and this is part of the whole process of the shift in strategic balances from the Euro-Atlantic to the Indo-Pacific, a process that has been going on certainly since the beginning of this century. And I believe that the United States, and this is reflected in the kind of contradiction in the policies, for instance, which the previous US administration followed, and this administration is following. And that is that the United States had not come to terms, in spite of their overwhelming power, with their reduced circumstances. This is not a contradiction. You can be the most powerful country in the world, but your circumstances are much reduced. And that's a fact.
Yes.
And that's a fact. Mm-hmm. And the irony of this is that this reduced circumstance is of America's own making.
Yeah, it's taken 15 years.
Yes, but it's of the Obama time. Exactly. So I think that sometimes, if you're sitting in Washington mm-hmm. and you want a certain outcome and it does not happen, it probably gets you upset. That why can't I do this? I am the most powerful country in the world. Mm-hmm. So I think the problem is you are also dealing with the biggest democracy in the world, which is not easy to bully or to have it follow your path, because the government is answerable to public opinion, it's answerable to parliament, And it's a government and a country which has systematically stood up for its independence in decision making and foreign policy.
Even when we were much weaker.
Even when much weaker. And the fact of the matter is, again, if you are going to, we are the victims, the outright victim. And if you are trying to suggest that maybe you're not the victim, maybe the other side may have a case to answer, I think it will get people in India get their backs up.
Indeed.
And I think the United States is a prickly democracy. India is a prickly democracy. These two prickly democracies have been trying for the last 25 years to get set on a path where the prickles get taken out and the positives get the upper hand. I think I would look at it in that sense, that in public opinion, yes, there would be some serious questions asked by a lot of people about the attitude of the United States. But I think in governance and in politics, you have to take this in your stride. In the longer term interest is what the government of India has to look at. And I'm sure that they will be doing that. So I would not, frankly, read too much into what has been said. What does worry me is, of course, that one statement that, the two countries have agreed to discuss the entire gamut of outstanding issues in a neutral venue. Now, that, I'm afraid, is something.
The line interjected at the behest of the Pakistani military.
I'm afraid that is an approach that is simply not acceptable in India.
Yes.
And cannot be accepted, and I don't see our government accepting such an approach. We've had an experience of this kind in the past. We are dealing with a country, Pakistan, which has never kept its word. So I think that perhaps was, I don't know why it was that statement was made, but that was perhaps an error in thinking. But I also find that the State Department has been backtracking on that.
Yes.
So we are seeing what we have been noticing otherwise also in the last few months. That certain policy prescriptions are laid out, positions are taken, and then efforts are made to start winding back. And depending on the subject, the winding back can be more serious or less serious.
Well, it has taken the form of urging direct communication.
Exactly.
And,
which is what our position is. We'll talk to each other.
Yeah. And let's hope that, given the importance of the strategic partnership between India and the United States, that this will be a brief interregnum in terms of a possible negative impact on public goodwill in India for the United States. And we'll move on from here. And,
absolutely.
And things will get back on track. Yeah. We'll see what happens next.
We don't want to disturb the process of improvement in the strategic partnership. But if the other side, but again, as I said, you need two hands to clap. Yes. So I think the ball is very much in the US court on this one.
We'll see next week. Our
Yes.
entire negotiating team is there in America. And
you're linking trade, I'm not linking trade yet.
Well, it was cited as a reason for the leverage. Now, if that it was cited, then you show that it was cited for a good reason. So let's talk trade and let's deal. So let's see what happens and keep our fingers crossed. All right, now there's a couple more questions left on this side of the discussion. We have a new policy, which is zero tolerance against terrorism. And also we have a new policy, once again, but even more clearly clarifying that the framework of any talks with Pakistan is going to be limited to an end to terrorism and return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So, how do you see this playing out, and what do you think is in the coming weeks and months something which we can expect?
Yeah, I think that's a difficult question to answer. So let me make a make an effort at suggesting that this new policy is quite well developed. I've been carefully rereading what the Prime Minister said, and I thought I found some gaps in the policy, but I found as I read his speech further, the gaps tend to disappear. So enough flexibility has been left in the policy, I think, that if there is enough progress in the talks on terrorism, we can start looking at other issues. And Pakistan occupied Kashmir is very much part of the problem of terrorism, apart from the question of territorial integrity. Obviously, the latter aspect will take much longer to happen, but I think the focus on addressing the problem of terrorism financed, aided, abetted from Pakistan will have to be addressed. And if I were Islamabad, I should be happy to start that dialogue because they claim that they are the biggest victims of terrorism in the world. And if they actually don't aid and support terrorist activity in India, what is their problem in wanting to discuss this issue with us? So I think the ball very much lies now in Pakistan's court. And also in some ways in the respect of in the court of the international community, which supports Pakistan, those members which support Pakistan, who have to now encourage Pakistan to start discussing the issue of terrorism with India seriously and in a manner so as to ensure that this problem can be done away with. Now, it's not going to be easy because it has implications for Pakistan's own internal politics and perhaps domestic stability.
Yes.
But I think the manner of this last atrocity in Pahalgam, the way it was conducted, is something which is going to be very difficult for India to forget in a hurry. So I don't see any real change in the policy. But again, you look at what the Prime Minister said. No, not the era of war, but not the era of terrorism either.
Yes.
So he's basically relating terrorism and war. Zero tolerance is a guarantee for a better world. Pakistan can ensure zero tolerance for terrorism also, if it really wants to work with India seriously. PM goes on to say, talks will be only on terrorism. Fair enough, we discussed that. It will only be on Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. We discussed that. It will have to be on that because they are two so closely interlinked. But I think what else he says is also equally important to bear in mind. And which is I would say the pressure part of the policy. If a terrorist attack on India happens, a fitting reply will be given. Reply will be on our terms. Befitting response on our terms. So we will define what our response will be and what the extent of our response will be. Nobody will tell us what. Goes on to say we will take strict action at every place from where the roots of terrorism emerge. As I said at the beginning, 21 camps have been publicly identified in the briefing made for the international media and Indian media. 9 were attacked, 12 are still pending. So I think that question mark over these 12 remains. India will not tolerate nuclear blackmail. We will discuss that. And we will not differentiate between the government sponsoring terrorism and the mastermind of terrorism. So I think the focus and the onus of this policy is on Pakistan. I believe our colleagues in Islamabad are clever enough and intelligent enough to get this message. And I also think they are intelligent and clever enough to start a dialogue on terrorism. I suspect it will happen. And that is where we will have to be very careful moving forward.
It shouldn't go the way previous dialogue.
Exactly. So I think, there will be enormous pressure on the government of India, not only from the West, but also from our neighbors in the West and East, in part of our Act West and Act East policy, and move forward Pakistan on other issues, etc. I'm not sure that one can predict at this point in time how we'll react to those pressures. A lot will depend upon, I think the response from India will be graduated, taking into account whatever Pakistan does on terrorism. And frankly, if I were Pakistan, it would be in Pakistan's own interest to dismantle the structure of terrorism that they have built in their own country for their own good. After all, what is the biggest threat to Pakistan today? Domestic terrorism, apart from other threats. So,
Yes, it has a huge impact on domestic security,
exactly.
and which can blow up at any time.
yeah, so I think it's not easy to answer the question you raised, but I think we will see a policy continuity from the government of India in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah.
A lot will depend upon how Pakistan reacts and how it's those who have given them the new IMF loan will work on them to respond positively to India on this subject. And I think the other aspect which we've not discussed is the Indus Water Treaty. How will India now move forward on this whole issue of holding the IWT in abeyance? That will be an extremely important part of the policy going forward.
It's is the key to the coercive pressure which has
Yeah.
to be maintained on
Yeah.
on Pakistan in times to come.
Yeah.
Okay, one final thought which follows up on what we've seen happen over the last 24 hours. We seem to be moving towards upgrading our relations with the Taliban in Afghanistan. And there's been a steady uptick in interactions. The Foreign Minister Motaki spoke to EM Jayashankar yesterday. They had a good conversation covering several elements of the bilateral relationship, which on the people-to-people and developmental side has been hugely beneficial to Afghanistan. And also the dependence of Afghanistan on Indian assistance through Chabad, because now that Pakistan is completely shut as an option for transit. So you think that this is something for which the time has come?
Yes, I think time has come. I've argued with you also that this should have happened much earlier. I think we have to bear in mind that Afghanistan is a civilizational partner. Don't forget, Afghanistan is a direct neighbor of India before Pakistan got created in 1947. I think,
Yes.
we shouldn't forget our history and geography. Afghanistan is an integral part of Indian culture and civilization. Yes, they have a regime in Kabul which we may find distasteful to some extent. But are there not other regimes in the world which are equally distasteful with whom we have relationships? I don't want to name them, but you
Which have been recognized and de-recognized at will.
Yes. But I think Afghanistan gives us other advantages also. In the fight against terrorism, if we can co-opt the Taliban government in Afghanistan, that can be of great help to us. Afghanistan can, let's say it out bluntly, is very important for us strategically. It provides us strategic depth. So the strategic depth which was used against India can now be used against somebody else.
Yes,
It is important for our relationship with Central Asia. It's important for our relationship with the countries which border Afghanistan, including Iran. So there are many reasons, I think, why we should be dealing with the regime in Kabul. We have a history of very solid ground-based projects, people-based projects in Afghanistan, which I understand are still functioning in Afghanistan.
we are sustaining them.
So I think they are being sustained because the Taliban have allowed us to sustain them.
Yes.
They are being sustained because the people of Afghanistan want us to sustain them. So I think why should we not deal with a country which has been so close to us civilizationally and is so important to us from so many other aspects, simply because they have a regime in Kabul which some people may find distasteful. As I said to you earlier, we deal with many distasteful regimes in the past in different countries.
And Afghanistan, the Taliban regime is reaching out towards us.
They are reaching out, and I think
They were positive in their response. They were sympathetic to what transpired in Pahalgam, and since January, there's been this continuous process of trying to engage us.
Okay, even before January, I think we have been interacting with them. I think those interactions should continue for a variety of reasons, some of which I have listed. But there are other aspects also. We have not even talked about trade. We have not talked about investments in minerals, etc. in Afghanistan. Afghanistan can be a very important partner for us.
Okay, so just a concluding thought. I think we've run through the entire range of questions related to the international response. Let me say in conclusion that we will really see as a litmus test of the international community's actual standing on the issue of zero tolerance for terrorism based on how they react to the listing of the TRF on the 1267 UNSC committee, and also a return of pressure on Pakistan on FATF pre-list sanctions, etc. But that's still to be seen, and we'll have to put in a lot of effort to push those two issues forward.
I won't hold my breath on the TRF.
Okay.
On the FATF, perhaps...
is that because of China?
China and Pakistan is also in the Security Council right now.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, and as far as the FATF is concerned, yes, I think it may be a better option at this point in time. But my question to you is different. My point is that even if the TRF is defined by the UN and accepted as a terrorist organization, what then? There are individuals and organizations which have been named terrorists by the United Nations Security Council, on which no action has been taken by the countries concerned.
Yes.
So, moral pressure, moral suasion is not good enough. And if you do not fight for your own national interests, nobody is going to fight for them. So, yes, the international pressure has to be sustained. We will sustain it, I'm sure. We have extremely competent diplomats who will do that. It's part of the process of building pressure and educating international public opinion.
Yes,
that I think is the most important aspect. Educating international public opinion about the reality of Pakistan's support for terrorism.
All right. Well, let's hope that eventually, as a result of these efforts, double standards on the issue of fighting terrorism will at least be mitigated, if not ended. Okay, Nalin, this has been a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I hope this makes sense to our listeners.
I do hope so. I hope they enjoy this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So, for a concluding word, past weeks have seen new benchmarks being set by India on both its response to terrorism and its approach to Pakistan. India has also signaled its intention to shape its strategic space more decisively and to mobilize its growing power to assert its national interests. We hope that you have enjoyed this discussion, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.